Hey everyone, it's Kevin, and welcome to the Cosmic Perspective. In this episode, I have a conversation with Bill Sillar about self-discipline, creating good habits, accomplishing your goals, and even psychedelics. So, without further ado, let's just jump into the podcast. All right, Bill.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks for coming, man.
Oh, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. This has been look forward to this for a long time.
Hell yeah. Me too, man. Me too.
Yeah.
This is gonna be a good time. So, I know that you had some topics that you wanted to cover on this one. So, we can just dive into it whatever pace you want.
Sure.
But I know self-discipline was kind of like that was the big theme that you wanted to cover.
Big time. Big time. So a lot of people are always asking how they can improve themselves, how they can make their lives better. And I think a big thing that you can really turn the corner on is if you really practice self-discipline, those things will line up and then you'll start achieving more goals. You'll be happier. There's a lot of things that go along with self-discipline. So really want to talk about it because it's a passion of mine.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. And what got you into the self-discipline? Like, what was the thing that really triggered the I guess the desire to be focused and to really hold yourself accountable to things that you set your mind to?
Yeah, this is going to sound stupid, but one of the big movies that I saw when I was a kid was Rocky, and everybody kind of knows the idea of Rocky is that he has to fight the champ in a short amount of time period. So what he has to do is just work his butt off so that he can be the best he can, so that he can fight the champ and hopefully win. One of the big things that you got from that is Rocky had no ability compared to what the champ had. The only thing that he was going to have was heart and his work ethic, just to get himself up to a spot that he was going to need to be able to fight the champ. He really had to put the time in. And so that's one of those things that I saw at that perfect age and it clicked for me. Also, when I was a kid, Michael Jordan was gigantic, and we all have heard that story about Michael Jordan not making his high school basketball team, and I think it was specifically he didn't make the varsity team when he got passed over for a varsity spot, and he was on the JV, and that just motivated him so that he was going to work and work and work and work so that he became as good as he is. And that's one of the things that separates Michael Jordan from everybody else is that crazy work ethic, but it's also that crazy competitiveness. And getting back to self-discipline, that's one of those things that really, that focus and that competitiveness is what really can put somebody in that mindset of always kind of walking the line and self-improvement all the time.
Yeah, totally. Totally. Yeah, I mean, so for you it was Rocky. For me it was this kid. He ended up being nice to me later, so I hold nothing against him. It was just kind of a trigger for me that set me off. I went to my first day of football practice.
Yeah.
Football was not open to the public for that particular rec league until they changed leagues, and they changed leagues right at the time that I kind of wanted to play football. So it was my first practice, and I'll never forget, he was like, "What are you doing here?"
Oh.
And when he said that, dude, that triggered me.
That was like Forrest Gump.
It was pretty wild.
Can't play
man.
here.
And obviously, your first year, I was on JV. Now this is middle school, so 6th grade.
Sure.
So this is a rec league. This isn't high school or anything. But I remember I could barely do push-ups.
Yeah.
Like without pads, let alone when we got pads. I was not in football shape. I was in decent shape because I played baseball, but I was not in that cardio shape. And I busted my ass. And if you ask like my parents or my grandparents, like I used to go home and do push-ups until eventually by the end of the season, I had the best push-ups on the team, like form-wise. And then, yeah. That was my trigger.
Interesting point that you make there, Kevin. And one of the things that you always hear about these guys that they might not have the best physical ability or they might not be the smartest guy in the shed, tool in the shed. But one of the things where I think that those folks, me included, have the advantage is that you get that chip on your shoulder. And it sounds like you got that chip on your shoulder with that dude, and that just pushed you to work harder. And, maybe instead of having a Whopper at dinner, you said, you know what, I'm going to have a salad. I'm going to have 4 boiled eggs instead, because you had that self-discipline. You had that goal in mind. You really wanted to be able to be the best you could. And then it would be really nice to shove it down that kid's throat in the Oklahoma drill, just take him and just body slam him.
Yeah, I made varsity the next year.
Nice.
When we went to the Super Bowl. We lost in the Super Bowl to the best team in the league.
Gotcha.
And I actually didn't get to play that much in that one, unfortunately. But it's still like that was such a game changer for me because that mentality did bleed into everything else I did from that point forward. I mean, that really, football taught me so many things about discipline. Like there's a lot of things that, I regret about football in terms of like how long I played. I probably could have stopped playing a little bit earlier, how much it fucked up my body, but the mentality and like the discipline and pushing yourself. I mean, man, I've never like ran harder than at football practices where you're running ladders and all these other crazy drills of just nonstop running and getting hit. And that was a big thing for me, and I definitely still carry that with me today.
I agree 100% with you. I played 3 sports in high school, so sports was one of those places where I really developed self-discipline very early, and I also was able to get that chip because look at me, I'm 5'9.5". I was 165 pounds in high school, and I played the line. I was so you're talking about a guy that was not the biggest by far, and I just put in the work, and I was just trying to do things so that I could get a seat at the table. And one of the things that I really love about sports and in general is just if you're putting that time in, they're going to find a spot for you.
Yeah.
They're going to be able, you're going to be on kickoff return, or you're going to be on kickoff or whatever. So that's definitely where I learned it in the early stages. I always picked it up from my parents because my parents have a ton of self-discipline, but sports was a big player in that, where I was able to learn it and to put it into practice myself, where I wasn't being told how to do it from my parents and things.
Exactly. And I think that actually goes into something that I was thinking about where I think a good coach kind of matters too, because you were saying like they'll find a spot for you. That's only if it's a good coach. If it's a good coach that recognizes how hard you're working. And I do feel like I did have some good coaches. I had some that weren't. Some that definitely did not, even though they knew I worked hard, they didn't reward me for it.
Right.
But I had other coaches where, like in 8th grade, so, that was now year 3 of me playing football.
Right.
In 8th grade, I played every down, dude. I never got a break. I was kickoff, return, kickoff. I was on offense and on defense, and I pretty much played nonstop at that point.
Right.
And that was because the coach really respected me. In fact, he wanted me to come play my freshman year. He wanted, because you can still play as a freshman in that rec league based on the age and the cutoff and everything. Still wanted me to play. I ended up going up to the high school level, and that coach really liked me too. And then he left for our rival school. And so then I got stuck with people who were coaches for all of the other kids who I played football with back in middle school and elementary school. And they didn't not like me. I didn't think it was that they didn't like me, but they also would forget about me.
Right.
And I actually ended up getting to the point where I was in between. So I wasn't first string, but I also wasn't second string. I was like the guy you put in the second somebody's tired. I was a utility guy. You throw me in wherever. Right. But I was forgotten about so often. And that ended up being what led me to quit football. But actually then Catalyst led me to then join like National Honor Society, Spanish National Honor Society, like all these things that is what got me into UF.
Right, and that's actually a great point that you bring up, is that you were able to take that behavior. Because self-discipline is a learned behavior. It's something, and I had listened to your writing show that you had with Joey, and you had talked about how writing is kind of a muscle, and you have to use it and you have to work it out, and that's how you get stronger with it. I believe self-discipline is the same thing. It's something that you have to first learn how to do the exercise. And once you learn how to go through and you do the steps to self-discipline, the more that you use it, it's easier to slide that piece of pie away from you once you've already had one, or it's easier to go through the steps once you've been able to do that.
Yeah, it's a practice. It's like meditation. Meditation,
Exactly.
it's called a practice because you have to practice.
Yes.
You can't just learn, like you can learn the lessons of what mindfulness gives you.
Yes.
But then if you're not practicing, even though you know the lessons, you're not applying it, and then you're not living it.
Correct.
And there's a difference between knowing it and living it. And I think once you transcend the knowing part, which is the first part of anything, is knowing the issue.
Yeah.
And then you get to the point where it becomes your behavior.
Right.
You know, your thoughts become your actions, and your actions become who you are.
Right.
It becomes your character.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, I completely agree. Self-discipline is a learned thing, and luckily, you know, if you learn it young enough, you carry it with you in everything that you do.
Exactly. And one of the things that also inspires me today is when you talk about like these Shaolin monks or these guys that when you're talking about meditation and things, these guys that are so disciplined, and then they do these superhuman strength things. They're able to take a sword and break it over their head or whatever. Like it's just things that the human body shouldn't be able to do. But these guys practice day in and day out, or they just have that mental toughness and that they can go above and beyond the limits of our bodies. And that's what really draws me to this, is the self-improvement, but it's getting the most out of yourself is what really attracts me to self-discipline, to be able to do all of those different types of things.
And I mean, it's fulfilling.
Yes.
It's legitimately fulfilling to know that you're putting an effort and then you do see the fruits of your labor. It's not always obvious at first, but it definitely hits a point where you're like, man, a year ago, I couldn't have done this.
Exactly.
And it's because you plugged away.
Yeah, that's one of the big things, too. The people that have a lot of self-discipline, you're hitting these goals, and you're going to have a higher self-confidence because, oh, man, that felt great. I just was able to do this, and I never would have been able to do that a year ago. I never would have been able to run a 5K. I never would have been able to bike 10 miles in a half hour or whatever. You know, you wouldn't be able to do those types of things if you didn't have the self-discipline and you constantly push yourself. And one of the quotes that I like that I wanted to use is that get good at feeling uncomfortable. And I don't know where that's from, but I wrote that down because I was, just kind of going through and looking up some things. But I think that's a good mantra to keep with yourself, is that in today's day and age where we're constantly distracted by things, it's very easy to sit on the couch and binge Netflix or to play video games or do something. And we've set up a very cushy kind of world around us.
Yeah.
But if you really want to get
soft.
better, if you really want to get better at something, I think get good at feeling uncomfortable. I think that's a really good mantra to have.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely. I have a similar mantra, and it's getting comfortable, getting uncomfortable.
Right.
But yeah, it's the same premise, is just the idea that if you're constantly in a state of discomfort, not in a bad way, there's there's a nuance to that word discomfort. But if you can get comfortable with knowing that you're always trying to push yourself outside of your comfort zone, that's those moments of, and something that one of my friends, Matt, said to me recently was just like this getting over these moments of being uncomfortable and being ashamed. Shame is a useful tool.
Yes.
Like, you don't want to always be ashamed, but in those moments of being ashamed, you end up leveling up and transcending whatever was causing you to be ashamed, because you look at it from a new perspective and you're able to address it and change your behavior accordingly. So if you do something, for example, you get really drunk or some shit, and then you get to a point where you do something really ridiculous, and you could blame it on the alcohol, but I think that's kind of a scapegoat in my opinion. But you hit that point where you do something shameful, and the next day you feel terrible about it. That shame should be the thing that caused you to not repeat that behavior. Right. It doesn't always work, but that's what it's evolutionarily designed for. At least that's what I think. Yeah. I mean, it makes sense that, there's a reason why we feel bad for stuff, is so that we don't do it again. Exactly. That kept us alive back when we were hunter-gatherers.
100%. Yeah, we have these gigantic brains, and we have no idea what this whole big thing is doing up here. So
we barely know anything about the brain.
I know, it's crazy. It's crazy.
I don't even think we've truly tapped into it. I mean, and that's I think where flow comes in, is that it's really tapping into some of the I don't think it's like the end all secret. I think it's just one way to tap into ultimate human potential, is to get into that flow state. But I think there are other ways that are maybe not the flow state in particular, that are also optimal ways to use our brains. We just haven't truly learn to train it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of ancient wisdom, though. I think that makes sense.
Definitely. I mean, a lot of the stuff that we're talking about with the self-discipline, the Shaolin monks, all of these, the Spartan warriors, these guys were so disciplined, and they've been using these types of things for thousands of years. So it's not something that's brand new. It's just, it's harder to do now just because of the way that society is built right now.
Your phone just constantly going off.
That's right. Yeah. You got all these distractions, and it's all about focus. One of the things, Kevin, when you're kind of showing me around your place, I know that you got your whiteboard, that you have goals and you have things that you're kind of checking off on there. That's awesome. And one of the things that you really have to have put in place to be disciplined is to have that active goal setting. You always have to have that goal where it's hard to reach, because you got to stay uncomfortable, right? You got to make it, you got to get used to 4%. Feeling uncomfortable. Yeah. And you got to make sure that you're trying to always test yourself and trying to reach and make yourself better. So that's one of the things I could tell that I could tell just from conversations that you're a very self-disciplined person, but seeing that, you're putting the stuff into action.
Yeah. And I recently got a planner too.
Nice.
Which is for the longer term goals. And so that I plan out like what I want to have by the end of the month, because it's easy, like, to create daily goals.
Yeah.
You could just come up with stuff like, oh, I feel like I should do this today. But it's better to have that like long-term vision of like, okay, well, this is what needs to be done by the end of the month. And in order for me to do that, I really need to have this done on Monday, and this needs to be done on Tuesday. Correct. Because I know my work schedule, and I know when I'm free, and I know how much hours I have to dedicate. And so that has been really helpful. I really had not done that. And I think that's partly where I would have some stuff and I would be putting out some content, and then other times I'd not, because it wasn't focused enough in my approach where my time was most efficiently used.
Right.
And I spent a good afternoon just like planning out my entire November of what I wanted to accomplish. And it's okay if you're ambitious and you don't accomplish it all, but if you can accomplish like 75% of it or something like that, then that's still a victory. I mean, that's still you holding yourself accountable and doing the things you're setting out to do.
Right. And when you hit those different types of things, do you have any types of rewards that you're building into that when you achieve those types of things? Is there anything? Is it just a good feeling that you get out of it?
It's kind of just a good feeling when I cross it off. But there are some things that I have been like, so lately I've been a lot smarter about my usage of cannabis. So when I feel like I've earned it, I'll let myself burn. But lately I've been taking like stretches of days off, and then when I feel like, okay, I'm allowed to burn on these days, I don't have to, but I'm allowed to. And it's kind of like a reward system.
That's excellent, because one of the things too is you're trying to also, if you're putting yourself in harm's way, then your discipline's going to be crap. If you're not eating right, so if you're trying to lose 10 pounds and you don't give yourself enough time to cook for yourself, you only give your time to go to Jimmy John's, you're not going to be eating that well. Even if you go with the without the
option.
bread, you're always going to be able to cook for yourself better. So if you make time for yourself, and if you keep yourself in a healthy state where you're getting enough sleep, you're eating correctly, you're going to make better decisions, not only about your life, but also just in your job and in these different things. So if you take care of yourself, your self-discipline is going to be improved because you don't have low blood sugar, you're not sleep deprived. That's a big thing. I mean, think about it. When you wake up and you're hungover, you probably don't have that much sleep. And so the first thing you want is the greasiest thing that you can think of so that you can satiate yourself. And that's not taking care of yourself, making poor decisions. So one poor decision leads to another one. Yeah. So that's a big point to it. And I know that you're a workout man, and you're constantly eating right and things like that too. So you're trying to keep your body in a spot where it's going to be in a good spot where you're going to be making good decisions about things.
Yeah, totally. And that's the thing, is like there's ways to engineer your diet where it doesn't mean don't eat good food or occasionally have that nice meal. It's the idea of knowing that it's an exception and not the rule.
Right.
And I think there's sometimes that line gets blurred if you do it too often.
Right.
And so that's kind of what I've been trying to do with cannabis, is like reprogramming. I've been in such a state of just habitual use of like just not even like all day necessarily, but like every night. And you know, if it's every night, then it becomes a habit more than you actually really feel like you need to burn. Like you probably don't even need to.
Yeah.
You might be able to just go that whole day without it, but because you're so used to it, then it's just becomes automatic, like autopilot programming.
Yeah.
And so lately I've been trying to break that down.
Yeah.
The same way with food, with this new diet of time restricted eating, of making sure that I'm only eating within the window that I have. And then once it's beyond that, you know, if I didn't get enough calories that day, then I will make sure I make it up the next day, and I will make sure to eat more within that window. But then it's just to monitor, to be like, all right, once I hold myself, okay, it's 8 o'clock and I ate at 12 and I can't eat later than that, then that's it. And you hold yourself to it. And then you're allowed to have your 2 days a week that you can cheat on it, and that's fine. And I try to save those for days that it's unavoidable to cheat, you know, that it's unavoidable to have that time.
Right. I think one thing you mentioned is having that cheat day. I find that's actually really important to me, just to know that I can have kind of one day where I can live a little bit. So one of the things that I really try to do with my diet is I try to get away from carbs, because carbs just like pound on me. I just get huge when I eat pizza, and pizza's my favorite food. But I kind of have that rule like you have with cannabis, is that if I have friends over, we can order pizza, or we can, if we go out to eat, I can eat some carbs. I can do that with, because I don't go out to eat that much. I don't, you know, I'm not having friends over 4 days a week, but when I have them over, you know, then you can live a little bit.
Yeah, and those are the moments that you should, because if you're never giving yourself that, then you're almost torturing yourself.
Correct.
You know, then it becomes unhealthy in your way of trying to be too healthy.
And when you fall off the wagon,
you fall way off the wagon.
So one of the things when you were talking about shame before, you have to watch out, is that it's good to have, maybe call it temporary shame, but if you have really beating yourself out, you're never going to get back on that wagon. So you have to have that ability to forgive yourself, because you're not going to have perfect self-discipline. It's not going to happen. You're gonna have a cheat day, or you're gonna, you know what, I slipped up and I had a brownie at lunch, or whatever that you're trying to avoid. You're gonna do that.
Yeah, and when you have those moments, if you never let yourself, like, so have you ever, I don't know how many people you knew that were those people in high school that didn't drink at all, and then they go to college and then they just, whoa. And it's because their parents were like, yeah, okay, there you go. But like usually it's a parent that's really restrictive that thinks, oh, I'm protecting my kid from all this stuff. When the reality is the exposure at a young age can be very valuable to somebody who then learns to respect it early.
Right.
You know, you make the mistakes and then you learn to not go super ham when you finally get the freedom to do it.
Right. That's kind of like the European drinking age, where it's younger than ours, or they don't have the same concept on booze that we do, where we're just slamming shots. We're trying to get as hammered as we can in that 5-hour period, because the sun's going to come up tomorrow and we're not going to be able to drink.
Yeah.
So I definitely get what you're talking about. But yeah, trying to make sure that you forgive yourself, put rewards in there, active goal setting is another thing that I see that you do all the time, that you do a great job with, removing temptations, setting up those rules. One thing that we haven't talked about from this perspective, just kind of setting yourself up for self-discipline, is if you have a goal in mind, don't wait for the right time. Just go for it.
Yeah.
You gotta get used to feeling uncomfortable, right? So if you have a goal in mind, just start it today.
Yeah, there's never a right time.
Correct.
I mean, sometimes the timing can work out nicely, but it's usually in retrospect that you notice that, rather than in the moment. In the moment, it might not always feel like it's the right time, but then when you're looking back, you're like, oh, wait a second, that was exactly when I needed. The same way that you said where you saw Rocky.
Yes.
At the right moment, that it just happened to trigger the right clicks.
Yes.
The same thing happened to me with mindfulness, meditation, psychedelics, and kind of just changing my perspective on life.
Sure.
It all happened at this pivotal moment that I really needed it. Yeah. I mean, I was at my lowest low in terms of how I was feeling about myself, how I was feeling about my situation, my unhappiness with the university, and all the times that they weren't giving me the classes I needed, and I felt like I just kept getting screwed by the man.
Yeah,
which I'm sure is how you can imagine. That's where I have that perspective, is because I've been kind of like fucked over by institutions a lot, including most recently with my arm in the medical field. So it's just when I've had so many circumstances like that. it certainly brought me down. It certainly made me feel like shit. And I happened to watch some, one of my roommates, who's also my co-writer to the show that we wrote, he introduced me to Jason Silva, who's the host of Brain Games and Origins, and he does Shots of Awe on YouTube. And so I got into the Shots of Awe, and he was introducing all these ideas and concepts, bringing in different philosophers, different scientists, different great thinkers, and he would put them all into his own little freestyles for a couple minutes.
Sure.
And the ideas themselves started really penetrating my mind. I was like, damn. Yeah. And then I learned about the benefits of mindfulness meditation, and that really was like game changing. And then I read an entire book. Keep in mind, I was like the type of guy who was like, oh, I only do weed. Like that's my only drug, my only vice. And I ended up, hearing about the benefits of LSD from a guy in my philosophy class, which is fucking hilarious, so stereotypical. But he gave me a more unbiased opinion about like what it really is, rather than what I'd kind of been propagandized with.
Sure.
And I ended up reading an entire book on like how to drop acid, like how to do it safely, what pitfalls to avoid. And it ended up
Timothy Leary?
No, it actually wasn't, but I have read that too.
Yeah.
But no, it was I don't remember who the author is, but
sure.
But it ended up being exactly what I needed, because then when I did do my trip, it was so meaningful. It wasn't just a stupid get high type trip. It was like I was already looking for those answers, and I found the answers I was looking for because I was ready for it.
Sure.
And that's where I never advocate for people to do psychedelics. Like I think if you feel like you're ready to do it, then you are, and you're gonna find some really cool shit if that's what you're looking for. But that being said, it's a tool, and like any tool, it can be used, abused, it can be used incorrectly. I don't think that there's necessarily always a correct way, but there are some really good guidelines to follow that make it easier to have this transcendent experience. And for me, I'm not a spiritual, or at least I wasn't a spiritual guy before, definitely not religious. And after having that, I kind of had more of a religious moment and a religious view on the universe, and I see it more in a spiritual way than I ever did before. I don't follow a dogma, but I certainly see the magic in the cosmos and how we're all stardust, and something about that really just it touches my soul.
Yeah, I get that, man. That's crazy.
Yeah, people get it in different places. I just happen to get it in psychedelics.
Yeah. So with LSD, do you have rules that you have with weed where you can only do it every so often or anything like that, or is it whenever you get your hands on it?
That's a good question. I would say
too much. I don't know anything about LSD, but I've always heard you put the hole in your brain. It puts a hole in your brain.
It definitely doesn't do that. No, it's actually one of the safest drugs in terms of like metabolically and like how your body processes it. It's one of the safest drugs. The problem is the mind state that it puts you in can be dangerous for somebody who's not maybe in a good situation. If your life's kind of going downhill, it makes you like so painfully aware of it that it causes people to go into that psychosis.
Yeah.
But it's not the drug as much as it is their own mind doing that.
Yeah.
I find that LSD is easier to control the experience than psilocybin is, which is magic mushrooms for people that don't know.
Yeah.
Those will humble you in a way that you had no idea.
Sure.
But whereas LSD is easier to get what you wanted out of it if you set the intention. I think reading that book was probably the most enlightening thing for me. And every time that I've tripped with friends that maybe hadn't done it before, I've been able to curate the experience based on that knowledge, and they've never had a bad trip with me.
Yeah.
But again, it's not for everyone. I'm not advocating for it. It's more of like, if that's something that you're interested in, it certainly can benefit you with the right people and the right intentions. It does take planning, and the idea of set and setting, mindset, and the location you're in largely affect how the experience goes. So if you have a good mindset, going into it, knowing I'm going to come out the other side with a new perspective, a different way of viewing the world, you fucking will. It will definitely do that for you. And if the setting you're in is comfortable, you're in your house, you feel good, it's your space you're used to, you go out in public only when you want to, and in settings that, because to be honest, being outside, it's better. You feel better outside because you're connected to nature more. You see the trees, and you see, for me, I was in Florida, so I was very near all the animals, and I felt very connected. I felt like I was part of the ecosystem.
Right.
It's a beautiful experience, but it can't always be that way, and it is largely dependent on you and what you're trying to get out of it.
Wow. And it sounds like you have built in those rules into it. Yeah, we'll get that siren out in post. So,
sorry guys, it's not you.
Yeah, it's Chicago.
It's Chicago.
Yeah. Anyway, but you have certain rules and certain things that you've done to put in to avoid a bad trip or to avoid a bad mind state with that, which is awesome. That you've kind of learned the tricks of the trade.
And that doesn't mean that I haven't had difficult times. The tricks of the trip, yeah. And I have had difficult trips, but not the whole trip. It's usually a difficult 20 minutes or a difficult hour or what have you. It's never the whole thing because I just know that you can get trapped in that. You're very susceptible to certain emotions being a little more driven. So when you get into that loop, the easiest thing is to change the setting. So if you're feeling like shit in one room, if you literally walk into another room, each room gives off a different vibe, for lack of a better word. And the space itself will design how you feel in it. And that made me so much more conscious of my space, which is why I design my spaces now based off of that information, knowing that if I feel comfortable in something in a sober setting, not even on the drugs, that I will feel better because it is having an unconscious effect on you whether you notice it or not. It's very
like
subtle.
A feng shui kind of deal?
It is like feng shui. Yeah, it's very similar in that that mentality of how the way you design the space will design you. You know, we design our reality by the feedback loops that are engineered from the things that are feeding onto you as well as the way that you're feeding onto it. Okay. So if you're, for example, you go to a place like you're at the top of a mountain, right? That gives you this feeling of awe. I mean, it's like an instant awe. That same kind of concept can be applied to designing architecture. And in fact, that's
so wait a minute, can we take it back? So
sure.
And you said the feedback on the mountain or the feedback on the object too?
Yeah.
So that would be my feedback on like Mount Fuji?
Yes. Yeah.
What does Mount Fuji feel?
That's true. Well, it would feel
I don't know why it was the first mountain I thought of. But
yeah, no, that's a good question. Maybe that example's not as good of it as like your friends, choosing your friends, right? So your friends are very much a part of the environment, so to speak, right? If you were to define yourself as a self, and then everything else is the outside world and the environment, the people you surround yourself with is just as important. So the way that you're feeding onto them and the way that you're able to affect them in a positive or negative way is the same way that they're then going to feed back onto you. And if everything that you're doing is a positive, if you're putting out positive in all of your equation,
100% agree with this.
You're increasing the probability that it will be positive. It can't. I mean, it's not foolproof. It's not always going to work. But just knowing that you're playing the probability that if I'm coming into this with a good attitude, then the likelihood that things around me are going to affect me in a positive manner is just more likely, and it makes sense, right? You make more flies with honey. Oh yeah, it's the same thing.
I agree too, and then I think that's another thing with goal setting and just with being self-disciplined, that if you surround yourself with people that are positive thinkers and people that are, if you tell somebody, this is my goal and this is what I'm going for, that's going to help you. Because you had mentioned that shame before. If you told somebody, hey, I'm going to be on SNL someday and I'm going to be doing this and I'm going to be doing that, I don't know why you would say it like Rodney Dangerfield, but that's what you might say. And then if you're not taking those steps to hit that goal of getting to SNL, and it's a little shameful if you're not telling those tips to people that are close to you and have that positive outlook. Because if you have a negative person, it's going to be easy to fall off that wagon to do those things. Not going to motivate you.
They become an energy drain. I mean, legitimately. And it doesn't even have to be somebody who's like literally evil to you. Yeah. Like it's somebody who, and I just saw a study and I wish I could cite it, but was that the people that actually affect us negatively the most are the ones that we're not sure where we stand with them. It's the people that we are unsure. It's the uncertainty, right? The same way that the fear of the unknown is usually what scares you in scary movies rather than the actual, objects themselves.
Like Jaws, you never get to see the shark until the last 10 minutes of the movie, right? You see those barrels floating by, and that's the scariest thing that you could ever see. And, you think of any scary movie, the scariest part is not seeing the monster or the alien or whatever. It's hearing them coming or just, thinking about that. You're 100% correct with that.
Yeah, it's pretty wild when you unlock that little secret about reality, of just knowing that perception is reality, and that's a really commonly said thing, right? So this is nothing new, but your perception can alter the way that the reality around you is going to construct your own narrative from it, right?
Yeah.
So if I'm going in with this mentality that the world's great and people are good, I'm probably gonna meet more good people. You know,
Correct.
selection bias, right? It might not even be objectively true as much as it is personally true. It's your own personal truth, and you will reaffirm that bias just through your actions and the way that you perceive it.
Yeah.
And so you end up hacking your own neurological wirings by saying, hey, I'm going to look at it from this perspective no matter what. So no matter what's hitting you, it doesn't matter, because you're always going to react in that positive way. So the most negative shit can happen to you, and you will bounce back because you know that, oh, well, this happened for a reason. I'm able to now bounce back from it because of this.
Right. And you've kind of seen that in certain groups of friends that I've had, where you've had that Eeyore, you know, that negative Nancy, and they kind of weed themselves out of it.
Yeah.
Because if you have that majority of positive people, then the Eeyore kind of finds himself out of it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Definitely. They really do. They end up ostracizing themselves.
100%.
Because then everyone's like, oh, but I don't really like being around that person because I feel like I'm walking on eggshells. Like they're getting triggered every 5 seconds. Yeah. I mean, I completely agree. I think ultimately pick the people that are going to better you.
Yes.
Pick the people that aren't afraid to be honest with you and tell you the truth. It's not always going to be pretty.
Yeah.
But if they're doing it, it's because they care.
Oh, 100%.
You know, you can tell when it's coming from a nice place versus
100%.
just trying to criticize.
And having that support is another great way to keep that self-discipline and hitting those goals. You know, with our improv group that we have, a lot of people, we were talking about this off mic, that we were saying that if you have a lot of people that have the same goal, it's easier with that group think and to be able to hit those types of things, because different people bring different skills to this. So, you know, some might not be as organized, but being able to say, hey, this is X, Y, and Z is what you need to get to the next level, or what you need to do to accomplish that. And then someone else might be able to be more of a cheerleader than somebody else. You're having in filling those gaps with that group, and that's a big way to accomplish those kind of goals.
Yeah, think about when you make your friends that it's an ensemble.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
The same way that our improv group's an ensemble, is that everyone plays a role in your world the same way that you're playing a role in their world. And when you understand your role for someone else, that doesn't define you, right? You shouldn't define yourself by the roles that you play in other people's lives, but you should know what you provide people and try to do that. Because if you're good at something, the world needs more of people who are doing what they're actually good at and what they're born to do. We don't need more people to just be doing a job they hate and just, you know, kicking their feet in a 9 to 5. We need more people coming alive and feeling like, I'm doing my purpose. I'm serving my purpose in this world. And there might be no purpose, but if you create a purpose, then that's as good as any, right? If you you find in yourself that I feel good when I do this, well, then that's your fucking purpose, man.
Yeah.
Just do it.
I was born to bullshit, so I get to do that on a daily basis. Born to bullshit.
Yeah, you know, sometimes we need a good bullshitter.
Yeah, I know what you're saying there, other Peter.
No, it's true though, man. It really is. I mean, if you can provide your service, so to speak, to other people, and that makes people happy, then
We should do
want to be around you.
dueling griffins. There we go.
Yeah, I haven't done too many voices on the podcast. I feel like I should incorporate, you know,
Bring in a couple more people.
Yeah.
Get an occasional other opinion
Right.
from a few ridiculous characters.
Wow.
Wow.
When is he gonna have his sexual harassment case? You know, we got so many people getting smacked down right now.
The only one that might have said anything fell over a boat.
Yeah, yeah. I love how you take the one syllable words and you stretch them into two. It's extra walk.
It's very walking-y. Yeah, it's just how he does it.
Who was that he was on the boat with and she fell overboard?
Oh, God. I forgot. It's another famous actor.
I want to say it was
I know
Mariska Hargitay's mom, wasn't it? Or no, she died in a car crash maybe?
I don't remember. There's another guy. There's another guy that was with them.
This is where the podcast wheels fall off.
Yeah, sorry guys, we can't remember, but I'm sure if you Google it, you'll get an answer.
Yeah, exactly. You're probably screaming at SoundCloud right now.
Damn it!
You morons!
You fucking idiot!
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, exactly. So, getting back to it, I think we kind of hit on a lot of the things with how to kind of accomplish and accomplish a goal with self-discipline, but some habits that you might want to put into your everyday life. Kevin, you do them all the time with the active goal setting.
Mm-hmm.
Taking care of your body is another thing that you want to do day in and day out. Just eating right, sleeping, exercise, laying off the drinks, off the booze, whatever you got to do. We didn't talk about this, but it's organization. Just keeping yourself organized. You're going to get a lot more stuff accomplished. Mm-hmm. And it's more just keeping yourself in that right frame of mind so that you don't removing distractions from yourself makes you that much more invulnerable to temptation, and that's really what you're trying to do. What was it?
The resistance.
The resistance.
So in the war of art, which is something that we Joey and I talked about on the last podcast. Yeah. It's called the resistance, but the resistance is a clever way of all the different ways that you might get derailed. Yes. And this book is a super easy read. I highly recommend it for people who are artistic, but to be honest, kind of for anything. Really, it's just like kind of goal setting. And the way that it describes it is like the resistance comes in forms like literally like people distracting you. The resistance comes in the little voice in your head telling you to stop. Yeah. The resistance comes in forms of just other distractions that are distracting you. For some people, they're vice. If you're a guy, it might be pussy. If you're a girl, it might be dick. Right? Like whatever it is, dude. And that's fine. Like, hey, no judgment. I think we all have our vices, and I think that's a really natural one. It's literally ingrained and wired into our brains, so that's okay. But just knowing the moderation, and everything in moderation is key, including moderation. So I think sometimes you gotta have your binges so that you can appreciate the fact that you're not always binging.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I agree 100% with that.
Organization is key, man. I'm telling you, the planner was the game changer for me. That was the organization of like, I already was disciplined to do stuff if I set out to do it that day. Mm-hmm. But if it's not all building towards a specific goal, even if it's generally moving in the right direction, it's still not enough. Right. It's got to be focused where you got your milestones and you have your smaller, more achievable goals on the way there. Right. And eventually you'll look back in 10 years and be like, damn, like I never thought I could do this.
Time management too, because there's only 24 hours in a day, 365 days a year. You're trying to make yourself have as much output as possible. So by able to say, this is going to take me X amount of time to do this, that's going to be able to schedule yourself correctly. And that's huge when you're talking about self-discipline. Last thing from a daily habit that I really want to hit on is persistence. Mm-hmm. You really have to be persistent in order to keep this up. If we had mentioned those active goals, you're trying to set those goals so that they're hard to achieve. You're not going to be able to get them all. And you got to bounce back and you got to be persistent so that you make sure that you're hitting that and that you're going through and meeting that.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think, a good example is drawing. Drawing is something where people think you have to be really talented. The reality is you are practicing different things like perspective and drawing from memory and all these other little things that after you've done it for enough hours, it's legitimately muscle memory of just knowing how to do it. It's not like you have to be insane. I mean, obviously some people are more talented at doing that than others and their brain's more easily able to do it. But the reality is anyone can learn how to draw and to draw well enough. Right. You might not be the next, Picasso or Da Vinci or, any of the famous painters / artists. But at the same time, you can definitely get to a level that's like way above stick figures. Stick figures is you being lazy. Like you can draw people. It doesn't mean it's going to look great when you're first starting out, but you can definitely draw more than a stick figure.
And you bring up a good point. I think we all know that person from our past or maybe even the present life that is very naturally talented at what they do. So they might be a great athlete, but naturally they might be a very smart person. I had a kid that I went to high school with who never applied himself to a class, would get like D's and F's because he would never do homework. He would never do anything. But we all knew he was a smart kid based on the conversations we would have. He smoked me on the SAT. Just literally smoked me on the SAT. But I don't even know I don't think he's employed right now. And it's because didn't have that self-discipline, didn't want to put in the time to do those types of things. If I was going to have to pick between somebody that's naturally gifted or somebody that has that work ethic, I go with the work ethic every time and go with the self-discipline, because they're going to be an employee that's going to be there for me all the time. They're going to improve over time because they have that drive to go forward with it.
Exactly. Yeah, it's the curse of being talented and being praised your whole life.
And beautiful.
Right?
Yeah. It's my sin that I carry with me.
And you know what, man? Some people are just so good looking that, everybody's just stroking their ego.
Ridiculous. Yeah, and other things. Ridiculously good looking.
I'm so ridiculously good looking.
Exactly.
No, yeah. I do think that I think there is something to having struggle in your life. And although you'd never wish a shitty upbringing on anyone, some of the best people have come from shitty upbringings. I mean, I know Joe Rogan says that all the time, that he came from a not so great upbringing and that made him who he is, and all the interesting people he knows had kind of a tough childhood and whatnot. And I had a pretty good childhood, right? But specific things that triggered me, I used to be bullied in elementary school. And a lot of those people ended up respecting me in high school later, right? The people who used to pick on me, eventually they stopped.
Well, that's because you were doing all those push-ups.
Eventually I got much bigger.
You got bigger than them. We understand it. It's a prison mentality.
It kind of can be.
Yeah.
But those same things, right? So somebody who met me now, you could assume that I've been handed a lot of stuff. The reality is I've worked for everything that I have. And I don't even mean that in I'm not flexing. I'm proud of myself. You know what I mean? I worked my ass off. Everything you see in this studio, I bought.
You're humble flexing.
Right? No, but I worked on it. And it wasn't it wasn't like I don't have privilege, because I do. I'm a white male in America. So there's privilege right there. And I was born in a family that was not poor, we didn't live in the ghetto, but we also, after that 2008 crisis, we never recovered. Right. So, you would have an illusion almost of you bought this house 20 years ago, back before shit goes south.
Right.
And so it gives an appearance that you're in a better situation than you actually are. But at the same time, that is the exact reason why I am the way I am today, and I wouldn't change it. I really wouldn't. I feel blessed to have had those struggles, because that's also what caused me to I had to get a job in high school, because I had to save up to buy my own computer for college.
Yeah.
I had to put myself through college, so I knew exactly how much I'm paying for tuition and how much I was paying for housing, and I got student loans and all this stuff. But that's going to make me a better person.
Yes.
That's the obstacles and struggles that I needed, that discomfort for me to push myself to get to that level that I'm at now, which is I still have so much to go, but I feel like I'm at least on the right path.
Right.
I'm moving up. At least I hope so.
Oh, right. Definitely, man. No, you got that drive, you got that persistence to push on through, and you're trying to get the best out of yourself. So you're following a lot of these things that we talked about today, so that's awesome.
Dude,
you
are
a big
too,
example
man.
of it.
You are too. Let's give you some credit here.
Yeah.
You worked your ass off. You're in a good spot in your company. You're still pretty young given where you're at.
Yeah.
You busted your ass, and you've earned it, and it wasn't handed to you either. So.
And actually, one of the things that I really like to talk about is that it's really difficult for me, because when I was a kid, I was extremely shy. So I would see my aunt or uncle, and I would cry. That's how shy I was. And this was when I was even a little older too. So it's really difficult for me to kind of get in front of people and to talk with them. So that's where I've worked on that over the years, and that's why self-improvement.
I couldn't tell.
Yeah, exactly.
Could not tell. From when I met you, would have never thought that.
Yeah, because it's a show. It's a total
right?
show. I'm an introvert.
We all put on the show. We're all playing the role that we think we are. So a quote that Jason Silva says all the time, and I know he's probably quoting somebody else, but is, "I am who I think you think I am." As the idea is that you are who you believe somebody expects you to be when you're with them.
Yeah.
Right? And it's a mask, and we all are putting on different masks, and you put on a different mask in different situations, right?
Right.
Everybody, I have a mask for my family. It doesn't mean that it's not me. It is me. It's just the family version.
Sure.
And then I have a mask for my friends and the people in my age group.
Yeah.
And that is also a version of me. It's
Yeah.
not it's not even like you're being someone else. Well, at least if you're trying to stay true, some people are being somebody else. But you can be multiple complex versions of yourself that just you know your audience. You know, curate the experience based on who you're with.
It's kind of that feedback thing that you were talking about earlier, that you're channeling the feedback based on the tone that should be received, that will resonate with those people.
Exactly. Yeah, you know your audience. You know, I could have a
Exactly.
conversation about something that maybe some people would shut down on, and then have that same conversation in a different way with someone else and have them be open to it.
Exactly.
And so it's just about finding that balance, and I still am figuring that out.
I think so. That's actually been a big thing that I've learned through my career, is that you just can't give the same message to the same person.
Yeah.
Because,
You can
or,
try.
I'm sorry, you can't give the same message
To
to
different
different people.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I said that wrong. Because the one way that I might say to you might motivate you, and then I could say the exact same thing to another person,
Shut
and
down.
it would shut down, demotivate them, they quit.
Yeah.
And it's being able to find that out, because some people are motivated by money, some people are motivated by praise, others are not. You have to find that motivation, and that's really one of the things that's been a big learning process as I've become a manager, become a director, become where I'm at today.
Exactly.
In my company.
No, and that's awesome. I learned a lot of that in my previous job at Apple. They literally teach you.
I thought you looked familiar, Steve Jobs. You're not really dead. You're doing podcasts in Wrigleyville.
Who wants a stylus?
Yeah, exactly.
But no, so the one of the things that, I mean, hopefully this isn't like gonna get me in trouble, but there's different types of customers is the way that we are taught. So there's different ways that you can react to different types of customers,
Right.
and to just best help them. This isn't designed to scheme people. This is literally just like, hey, we've just learned after taking thousands of calls that the best way to reach somebody on something that most people shut down with technology, right? To find a way to break through those barriers. And so they have feelers, people who are very emotional. They tell you how they feel about things.
Yes.
There's thinkers, the people who need to know exactly how and why everything's working.
Yes.
There's directors, the people who like to be told exactly where to go and what to do. And then there are like the creative people. I forgot. I think they call it something else. But the idea is that it's kind of, maybe it's like a talker, like somebody who would be like a talker, a creative, like a more of a performer type person.
Gotcha.
And each person, you would approach the exact same issue, right? It might be the same Wi-Fi problem that they're having with their iPhone, and you would approach it with just a different way of saying it and a different way of delivering the information. And that was so valuable, because I still apply that now when I'm speaking to people.
Right.
And it actually took a while to deprogram how I originally had to, like, on the phone, you have to control the conversation because you don't want to waste time. I had to like deprogram that after I quit, because I didn't want to control every conversation I'm in. That's not what a good conversation is.
Yes.
And I think I'm still fighting that, because I had to take, if you imagine like, the 10,000 hours, dude, I put like a lot of fucking hours into just talking on the phone with people.
Yes.
At a certain point, it just becomes like ingrained in your head. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. I mean, you do it that much amount of time that you've trained yourself to do it that way. Mm-hmm. That's where a lot of these habits, that if you build those into your, like, if I don't go to the gym X amount of times in a week, if I fall below that, I am like pissed off at myself. It's you ingrain it into yourself so that you have to do that, and it's tough to break that habit.
Yeah, it definitely takes at least a few weeks to really break a habit.
Yes.
And that's where you have to hold yourself to it. And I keep going back to the cannabis thing, because that's kind of what my most recent of trying to reprogram is. And just for me, it's like I have to take a certain amount of days off for me to feel like I'm not in a habit still.
Yes.
Otherwise it's just, I'm going right back to my old ways.
There's a lot of, whether it's drinking, whether it's cannabis, it's drugs. There's a lot of vices out there. Masturbation, there's
eating
a lot,
fast food.
Yeah, eating fast food. It's trying to build those rules around it. That's a great way to keep self-disciplined, so that you're not going to fall back into that habit that you're trying to break. I think that's a good it's a way that you could have those training wheels.
Mm-hmm.
So if you build those rules into it, hey, I'm not going to be able to go this far. I'm not going to be able to go that far. But like we mentioned before, you're still going to be able to have that cheat day. You're building that into it, which is nice that you can still have that relief.
Yeah, 100%, man. I think that's a good spot to end on, because honestly, I think we've covered self-discipline in a way where hopefully the people listening here can get something out of it, or at least hear something different, or think about how you could apply some of these. These are just general principles, and again, these aren't necessarily new ideas.
Yeah.
But if you haven't heard them in the same way that we were saying, that maybe that same message spoken in a certain way doesn't always resonate with everybody. Hopefully this resonates with you, and hopefully it does something. You know?
One of the things that I wanted to do at the top was a quote from Theodore Roosevelt, and I'm a big fan of Theodore Roosevelt. He's a super disciplined guy. One of the things that he said about self-discipline is, with self-discipline, most anything is possible. And I agree 100% with that. That paves the way for 100% self-improvement, and you could be that Shaolin monk.
Exactly. All right. Well, thanks, Bill. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, this is a really good conversation, and hopefully everybody else enjoys it.
Yeah.
All right. Bye,
Pass
guys.
that bowl.